Hello, I'm Carrie Ann Nadeau, founder of ODN, and we're back with Profiles in Risk, a podcast that enlightens the world of risk around you. Each episode, we explore insurance through the stories and experiences of the most influential thought leaders, product developers, and entrepreneurs modernizing the insurance industry. You can find more content at odnsure.com/thegolfcourse or show notes on insnerds.com. Enjoy this episode. Welcome back. This is Profiles in Risk. I'm Carrie Ann Nadeau, your host and founder of ODN. Today, I'm joined by a fantastic guest, the co-founder of Coverwallet, Rashmi Melgiri. Welcome to the show, Rashmi.
Well, thank you. I'm about to say welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for welcoming me back as well. I appreciate that. I'm so excited to have you on the show today, not only because you're a co-founder like myself in an insurance technology company, but you're doing some really epic things to transform the way that we provide insurance to customers. And really, I think, shining a beacon for the rest of the insurance industry to show them how it can be done differently. So thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Excited to be here. Thanks.
Cool. Well, for those that may not know about Coverwallet, I know you've probably got the elevator speech down at this point. I would love just give a brief introduction as to what you do for that audience.
Yeah. So what Coverwallet is an online platform where the easiest way for a small business owner to understand, buy, and manage business insurance for their business. Now, why that's interesting, I always joke that I hate giving that pitch because it sounds like it's 2002. Like, oh yeah, we built an online way to do something. Like, yeah.
Before the .com bubble, you sell somewhere.
So I think what would be helpful is if I give a little background in terms of just what this industry looks like and why Coverwallet's interesting. So across small business owners in the US, they're spending about $100 billion a year buying what is in large part mandatory insurance. So it's workers' compensation, which is required in most states, or it's general liability insurance or property insurance, both of which are required for most property leases when you rent a property, if not buy one. So you have this huge amount of money that's running through what is basically a non-elective product. And most people are surprised to find out that over 97% of that runs through physical neighborhood agents. So you could think about the way that we used to buy airline tickets in the 80s, or some people may not even know what I'm talking about, but before there was Kayak and Orbitz or Priceline, you'd actually have these hyper-local neighborhood agents. They were your travel agents, and they had the systems and the portals to key in all the information, and they would then turn around and give you a couple of prices, and you'd pick a ticket. That sort of direct customer to either airline or airline marketplace wasn't there. And that's the way that commercial insurance still works in the US. It's still very local agents. And
yeah, I have one myself. His name is Lorenzo. So that gives you like, you go through so much trouble to get small business insurance. It's a real challenge when you're starting out, right? You may not know what you need, where to go get it, how much coverages you need, whether or not you're getting ripped off on the price. Sounds like you could be solving a lot of problems, not just convenience. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we actually, one of the issues in sort of the outside space is like agents are overwhelmed by, there's so many different carriers, there's so many, different options that oftentimes what they're looking for is convenience, right? So they might go to the carrier or the insurance company that makes it most convenient for them to get back a price to service their customer. So they're creating on convenience themselves, but then where does that leave the end customer, right? The end customer is sort of left with a lack of choice because their agent is making decisions in between about the experience. That's just one asset, right? And then there's obviously kind of giving transparency through data and design online in the same way that maybe a Kayak would, right? Where you can really like compare a lot of things against each other to see the value of one airline ticket versus another. We're doing the same thing with business insurance, right? You can actually see prices, you can get comparative quotes, but you can also go through all the coverage in a really well-structured, well-designed way so you can make an intelligent decision. And then to your point, really, convenience, right? You can do this at 2 a.m., which a lot of small business owners are very thankful for. Most small business owners don't have a risk manager or someone whose job it is to buy insurance, right? They're the ones doing it. And that's outside of their regular business hours, plus doing payroll and accounting and all that stuff after hours. So just the idea of being able to do that in a self-service way, off hours, has been a big advantage for Coverwallet, or something we've really added to the market versus neighborhood agents who are, again, just another small business owner, right?
Yeah. And it strikes me that like a lot of what you're sharing is based, not necessarily based on, you know, your learnings as a company, but your experience maybe trying to get small business insurance, or conversations with business owners who inform you about those struggles. I mean, is that really, I think your company kind of differentiates itself a lot on the design thinking component. I would love for you to talk about how that is really foundational to your company, and what ways that it informs the decisions you make and how you sell insurance.
Yeah, so it informs it from before day one, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the sort of the seminal ideas behind why we went into this market, or seminal experiences, was my co-founder has been a business owner twice before. And so he's actually gone through the small business insurance process twice, both experiencing it as like a minor inconvenience and why isn't this online, and then as like a major inconvenience in terms of actually closing a deal, and insurance being one of the requisite items for the deal, and it being held up because this underwriter, this carrier was on vacation, and so it was actually like a delay until this guy could come back. And it's very human. It's very relationship based. A lot of it works that way. So you know, when we were thinking about starting something together, we went to business school together about 10 years ago, and reconnected 3 or 4 years ago and decided to start something. This was an idea we kept coming back to because on my end, I'd been a management consultant, and I just had been working with players tangential to the insurance industry. And I knew that when insurance companies would talk about the customer, they were actually talking about the agent, and they weren't talking about the end customer. And so kind of our experience has really pointed to like, there's a lack of sort of focus and design thinking on the end small business customer
owner.
Focus between the carrier and the agent, but we're not sort of seeing it trickle all the way through. We thought that, you know, what our skill set was really good at was technology design and product design around like, how can we just improve the end customer experience here?
Right. And fascinating, because it's really not necessarily an innovation to the product of insurance itself. It's to the process of delivering insurance.
Yep. And that is a big part of I mean, when we talk about that a lot, the product is not only that policy or the promise that you have that claim will be paid in the case of an event, it's actually the process, because it is quite a process. So like, it is part of the product, right? It's part of the buying insurance.
Business owner to business owner. Yes. And any business owner listening into the podcast will probably like try to look for a bottle of something to have a sip of, just at the thought of having to go back through the process of getting business insurance. I don't look back on the experience fondly, but I'm grateful for Coverwallet now. So what was the first problem you set out to solve? When you got together, you thought of this idea, but I always think of entrepreneurs, or at least the best entrepreneurs, as those who go to market with their ideas, not just think of a great one, but like go test it, go poke holes in it. So was the first idea the idea? Did it evolve? Sort of what was the first step?
Yeah. So the first step was, I mean, we knew we were going to do this. It was a lot of self-education. Neither one of us is from this industry. So a lot of learning about the industry. We really tapped into our network, right? Folks that we went to school with, or we knew, or even just some blind outreach and saying, hey, like, we'd really like to get involved in this industry, and making connections and then learning. That was just a really big part of it, having, you know, keeping our mouths shut and our ears open and just saying like, yes, tell me what is good about this industry, what's bad, and like learning as much as we could. And then to your earlier question, like, what's the first problem that you actually went out to solve? The biggest problem that we went out to solve very quickly, we said, look, this is all about, we said originally, it's about convenience and timing. We said time is money for small business owners. On average, with a typical brick and mortar agent, they're taking more than a week to return a quote. We're going to beat that. We're like, we've got to be under a week. If we're not under a week, what are we doing? Right? So even without any integration, without any technology, part of our hurdle is just like, we got to do it faster, right? It's got to be one of the main value propositions that we're working on. So inside of that, I got licensed as an agent, you know.
Okay.
There was a lot of stuff that went into that.
Yeah, that's not just a small feat. There was a lot of work involved there. Sure.
But that was the very first metric we're very data and metric oriented here. That was the first metric we said, we gotta improve this.
I feel like there's so much meat left on that bone too, that like a lot of innovation in insurance has focused on sort of customer now. I think you've done a great job at Coverwallet to transition the way people have thought about the customer from the agent to the actual customer, the end user. But this question of efficiency strikes me as one where there's still a lot of opportunity to help sort of transform not only how we deliver insurance, but how quickly we respond. Doesn't seem like a problem going away with millennials. So I'm curious for your perspective, is the first metric, is it now a different bar we've set that, you know, a week used to be normal, now it's 24 hours, eventually it's going to be instant?
Yeah. So for us, it's primarily instant, right? We've built all these integrations now. Folks can see multiple quotes like that online, and really it's up to them whether they buy them there or they call in and ask questions, but it is instant.
Right.
There's no separation between giving us information and getting a quote.
And that's got to be, sorry to go a little off subject here, but that's got to be also incredibly beneficial to the sort of ROI of your company, right? Like how much time you spend actually administrating the process of getting insurance is probably more lucrative on the back end for any insurance carriers who might be listening in to find those operational efficiencies in delivering a product to customers.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you bring that up because, you know, a lot of folks will talk about, oh, are you replacing or are you competing with carriers? But I mean, it's like, you know, really small business insurance is measured by two metrics in terms of the profitability for the carrier. One is the loss ratio, which is the claims that are made against the premium that's paid. And the other is the operating ratio. Just like how expensive is it to kind of own a customer and acquire a customer. The loss part of this segment of insurance is fantastic. Small businesses really don't do that badly. So like their loss ratio is great. And what they'll complain about is it's really hard to make money on a small policy, not because of the losses, but because of how much human effort goes into it. Right. And so that's where we've really seen the love from the carriers is like, we really brought technology to this such that the acquisition of the customer is easier. And then this ongoing servicing of the customer. And a lot of that we've done by just providing a platform that makes it really easy to self-service, right? You can actually go online and, you know, a lot of folks ask why now? I'm like, well, why now is because we have a generation of small business owners who actually prefers it. Actually do it themselves and wait until, you know, 9:30 a.m. to speak to someone, right?
Absolutely. 10 years ago, I remember going to conferences in this space where we had the conversation of whether or not mobile was going to catch on because did everyone have a cell phone?
Right.
You know, that has changed. You know, that's almost the dark ages at this point. I think you're really pushing the paradigm further along to say not only does pretty much every small business have access to the internet, but they prefer to use the internet in engaging in acquiring services.
Right, exactly.
That's great.
They would love to do, if they can do 75% of the process on their own, they'll do it. And then but they don't need to call us for, you know, basic stuff, right? And like, we're happy to. We have some people who are on the road and they'll call and like, hey, great. But we just find that like now's the time because they actually prefer to do it themselves. And it's such a benefit to the bottom line for the carriers, right? And ourselves, the operating expense of acquiring and having a customer just goes down when people have the preference to take care of some items themselves.
Right. How did you acquire that knowledge, right? Like it seems so, you know, in hindsight, 2020, so obvious. Like, of course they want to buy but how did you figure that out?
Yeah, I would say we probably were a little like, it's obvious from the beginning, like naively.
Okay.
Right? It's not hard to predict the future. If it's not online, it will be. So we said, okay, it's like, it's gonna go online and it's going to be us. Now, once you get into it, man, it's incredibly tough. And there are a lot of really good reasons why it hadn't been done. And there's a lot of really good reasons that it even took us a while to, you know, get some momentum. But we definitely have this idea that like, when you look at all the basic functions of running a business, whether that's accounting or HR and payroll, you just saw this trend that small business owners were more and more gravitating towards online platforms rather than having their trusted advisor at a brand name shop. And the one place I always love to go back to is, this isn't necessarily small business, but TurboTax. I mean, you have something that's incredibly complicated that people really don't want to understand, but it's just a have to. And if you build an online self-service platform to do it, people are like, okay, great, I can just get it done. You know, I don't need to sit down with someone and have a whole conversation. So I just felt like there's a lot of evidence for that sort of naive notion that it's going to go online, it's going to be self-service. We just saw a lot more. We saw industries that were as equally complicated, as equally entrenched in trusted relationships go that way. And so we thought there's absolutely a path here.
Well, I'm impressed because it takes some clairvoyance to do that. And then it takes the hard work and grit of doing the market research, testing your assumptions and figuring it out. You know, when you first started, it sounds like it was just the two of you, maybe around a dining room table, figuring it out. And we all have our dining room table moment, but thankfully, and congratulations, Coverwallet has grown to now over 200 employees. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow. And so that majorly changes sort of, you know, the evolution of your company. It's a big company now.
Yeah.
Maybe you could touch on a little bit about how that evolution, you know, bumps, hiccups along the road, but like where you are now, you've landed at a big company and it sounds like even expanding from here next.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, there's really no hiccups. It's been all smooth. And
oh, great. Any investor listening, that's right. It's been completely linear, just positive slope. Yep. Fair enough.
I mean, you know, I would say the biggest hiccup was, I mean, the timing was so perfect in retrospect. But I'll tell you, we started the company in the summer of 2015. A lot of what we were doing was talking to carriers first and foremost, right? It's basically a two-sided marketplace. You have your small business owner. The want was there. There was no question about them wanting to buy stuff online. What was not there was the other side of the market, the carriers having technology or a desire to go online and to have an omni-channel approach outside of the physical brick and mortar agents. And so one of the, you know, the initial hurdles was actually a pretty consistent message from a lot of major insurance companies back in 2015 that they didn't want to be online, that the online customer was a bad customer. The online customer was a customer who couldn't get insurance from their neighborhood agent, and so now they had to go online. And so going back to my naive like notion this has to go online, it absolutely did from the end customer perspective, but how much of that was going to be held up by sort of the product provider, right?
Right.
Because you have channel conflict, you have all these things going on. So I was getting through those conversations and building the case more and more, largely built on data. I mean, 70% of small business owners start the search online. Absolutely a desire to go online. What happens is they put in their zip code and then they're told to go to that neighborhood agent.
Right.
And so, I mean, I felt like it was sort of, we just entered the market at the right place where there was a lot of folks internally at those companies, you know, us beating the drum saying, this absolutely has to be an omni-channel approach for you guys because sort of the incumbent big carriers, if you're not going to service this, you're going to have upstart carriers who just get an influx of capital and say, hey, we'll be completely online, right? Just kind of like digital banks in the early 2000s, right?
Right.
If you're not going to go online, someone else is going to do it for a lot less and get investors behind them to
eat your lunch. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I would say that was the initial hurdle, just breaking through that status quo mindset. But after that, I mean, I always joke that in 2005, we couldn't get like a carrier to slap us in the face, right? Like it was like hard to sit down and like have a conversation about having online distribution, right? And now we have a whole queue of carriers who want to integrate with us. And it's really about us picking and choosing the right things to prioritize. But that was definitely one of the hurdles.
Yeah, I always want to celebrate success that you're able to sort of up, around, under, through, get through those hurdles and also just recognize that it's a hustle. Like it's figuring it out. And it sounds like it sounds like it's overnight success, but there's certainly all these sorts of challenges that you have to be creative and figure out and just grind through. But it sounds like now where you're at, Coverwallet's sort of poised for expansion. So we're right at the end of 2018. Curious to know sort of what you got in your back pocket and where is Coverwallet going for 2019? How are you expanding?
All right, cool. So we talked a lot about what we do, which is primarily what we do is have an online platform to service small business customers. So you open a coffee shop in Hoboken, New Jersey, and you can go to coverwallet.com and actually get a policy. That technology platform, not only for the end user, but also for our internal agents and how they service customers when they call in, was really well received in the industry. And so we have expanded as part of this year, and I'll talk about plans going forward, into two other areas, which is just repurposing what we've really done from a technology perspective. One is we have a B2B platform where carriers have come to us and said, hey, like a lot of my agents don't want to use us, right? Because we work through a PDF that they fill out.
Help us sort of white label something that works.
Right, exactly. And so they actually wanted to talk about using Coverwallet technology and mindset and design to make it a better ease of use for their agents, right? And so that's something we've done. We've done a lot of B2B work with carriers, particularly Hanover, which is a major insurance carrier, different affiliate programs with agencies that they work with. The other one that I'm really excited about is we just launched it earlier this month in December. It's called Coverwallet for Agents. So going back to that, really we're over 97% of the dollars actually flow through is the brick and mortar agent plan, right? We've got a lot of inbound interest from day one of agents using our portal to get a quote and then calling us and saying, is there any way I could sub-license under you guys so I could actually sell this to my customer?
Right.
And we weren't able to do it, right? We were so focused on the end customer. But at this point, we've actually built out a platform where we're like, yeah, you can. You can be you can use the Coverwallet platform to service your customers. So now you have neighborhood agents who are part of the Coverwallet ecosystem that when their customer sits down with them, they're actually, instead of doing a PDF and a fax and waiting a week, they're able to service them right then and there. So that we just launched. You can look for that to grow wildly in 2019. We actually have a backlog of folks that have, or agencies that have signed up to be part of that platform. And then the last piece I want to talk about is international expansion.
Oh, wow.
And, I'm like just in the same conversation, talk about like the dining room in 2015 to talk about going international. Yeah. But this year in 2018, we worked with Zurich Insurance, it's one of the largest insurance companies in the world. They've never gone direct online. We are their direct channel in Europe. So if you're a small business owner and you have a coffee shop in Madrid, Spain, and you go online looking for insurance, you will find Zurich powered by Coverwallet, and you can get a quote instantly as opposed to going through a traditional route. And you can look in 2019 that we'll be expanding to even more countries and areas of the world with the Coverwallet approach.
I have so much to dive in on there because there's so much there. Congratulations on these multiple fronts. I think one thing that jumps out to me in particular is sort of the way you worked with agents, with carriers, with folks internationally. A lot of new sort of insurance technology, the fear is that they'll disrupt some sort of existing, very personal relationship. And I think it's quite a needle you've thread to find an opportunity to sort of integrate with these folks and solve multiple issues for multiple points in the value chain. Was that your intention originally? And is that the direction that you're going in?
I don't think it was the intention, but looking back, it was so obvious. So, I mean, nobody likes the 27-page PDF. The carrier doesn't like it. The agent doesn't like it. The customer, no one likes it.
Right.
Oh, keep that.
But everyone insists on having their own too, right? There's a 27-page version. There's a 23-page version. There's a 29-page version.
Yeah, exactly. So like all we've really done with technology is we've made the mundane parts that everyone hated go away, right? And that has just paid benefits to the carrier. It's paid benefits to agents. It's obviously paid benefits to the customer. But that's all we've done. We haven't really replaced the agent. We always say that our model is high tech and high touch. So yes, our agents are on the phone talking to customers, but what they're not doing is putting you on hold while they fill out a form on your behalf, right? That's all done. They're talking to you about coverages. They're educating you. They're helping you figure out the system, whatever it is. But it's not this low value interaction. It's a really high value interaction. That's all we wanted to do. And I would assert that's what the carriers and agents would rather be spending their time on as well.
Yeah. And I was going to ask why focus on this problem. I feel like you jumped the gun with the answer. It's a great point. I think curious to know your perspective on so let me back up a half step to say, I think that was an education for me when I figured out what actually happens when you submit one of these 29-page forms. You mentioned sort of somebody transcribes it. Maybe we should take a half step back and just say, like, what is the process today and what does it look like this year with Coverwallet, with sort of new products coming online? How does that change?
Yeah. So the process today, a typical process would be in, sort of a smaller agency. You might sit down with that agent. They'll ask you a couple of questions. They're incredibly brilliant and have a lot of this mapped in their mind, but they'll say, you know what, I think so-and-so is a good carrier for you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll then hand you an application and you'll fill it out, or they will swivel around their chair. And if that carrier is online, and not many are, they'll be asking you questions and keying it in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. At the end of that paper application process, they're faxing it in, and then that carrier is going to key it into their underwriting system and see what the machine says.
Mm-hmm.
After the machine says what it says, then a physical person who's an underwriter will review it and decide if that quote is good or if it needs to be adjusted. And in many cases, there just won't be a quote because it'll be denied, right? In the case that the carrier's online, it all depends on whether they actually have a quoting system online or if this is just a way for them to have you key in the information instead of one of their people, right? So there's a whole spectrum of what is actually being done online. And some of it's simply having one person do the key in, but there's still the manual work of underwriting.
Right.
And so that's really like what's driving all the delays over there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you talk about Coverwallet, what we've done is we've integrated all the way. So the keying in happens by the end customer, right? They're filling out a small application online that Coverwallet has provided. And at the end of that is hitting the rating engines of different carriers that we have integrated with. And it's returning quotes instantly. So the next screen that they see is a quote from 1, 2, or 3 carriers, and then all the details on the product coverage. So what we've done is we've just made that single entry, and they call it single entry, or single keying, single entry system, actually talk to the rating engines of these different companies and then return quotes. So it's an incredible amount of work there because this guy refers to himself, he might just say, I'm a barbershop in our application. Now, what does that carrier call a barbershop versus this one, right? There's a lot of sort of mapping and figuring out that has to go into that. But that's how the process looks different. So you do that upfront work, which is incredibly tiresome. But you do it, you make the investment of doing it, then you can actually deliver a much better experience to the end customer. And again, I would argue for the carrier as well.
Yeah, and it seems like such an archaic process to have multiple sort of key in entries usage of a fax machine, but it is pretty industry standard, as you mentioned. I think last time I checked, asked around myself, did a little bit of user research, about 40% of quotes hit an automated rating engine, so they're able to return an automatic quote. 60% still go through a manual process, and that's pretty industry standard. Some carriers do better, some carriers do worse. So with the success that you're seeing in, driving more business to your platform, getting more customers engaged, getting people happy and excited about buying insurance for small businesses, are you finding that that's actually driving change on the insurance carrier side too, to provide more automated quotes? Because I feel like on their side, there may be a little bit of reticence there and comfortability and sort of the security, as you mentioned. Is this a barbershop, or is it a barbershop that's actually like making TNT in the back room, or like a daycare that's also like baking, or some, crazy combinations that might exist? So I'm curious to know, like, do you think that what you're doing is also driving change within the carriers to increasingly automate? How are you seeing that manifest?
And we're pushing a lot of that, right? So
yeah.
When we first start integrating with a given carrier, oftentimes what they're doing is saying, these are the classes or class codes that I will make available for online quoting, right? A subset of what they allow out in the brick and mortar world, right?
Right.
Or even to us if we use their portal. And so what we're able to do is we'll still do some amount of non-online binding or quoting for customers. Mm-hmm. And over time, we've just shown them, we've shown them that these are good books of business. There's no reason not to turn it on, right? Whatever concerns you had about this class, et cetera, we can alleviate those. We can do that through technology. We can have a call with you every week to review these, whatever it might be. But we've really been doing the nitty-gritty auditing of everything that comes through Coverwallet to show them that it's not the case that, bakeries are okay and barbershops aren't. But we can show you, and we can even get more ground. Barbershops that have these characteristics are fine. Let's add it. Why not? It's better for both. Right. And so again, just one of our mindsets is just incredibly data driven. We just show them the data. It's hard to argue with data, right? It works. Let's just add that. Let's add this to the integration.
And are they able to then sort of grab data from your side as well? Is that a fluid process? Because I'd imagine there's some amount of personally identifiable information around claims or experiences with the customer that the carrier would be pretty close to chest with.
Yeah, so we're only sharing unanonymized sort of, high level
Aggregate. Okay.
level of class codes, et cetera. And the carriers don't reach in and grab data from us. There's definitely a wall there. So we use data really as a strategic asset, right? To push the envelope on the things that we think are really important for the end customer experience.
Now, are you seeing, you mentioned sort of don't be afraid of barbershops. You may have been afraid of barbershops before, and we're using that as an example, but I'm curious with sort of new industry coming online, things like food trucks that nobody knew how to write, or like home-based businesses, like all of the computer technology consultancies coming online. If there's classes that you're seeing and sort of, are you able to sort of and see the future in a way about like where and how the insurance industry can expand profitably?
Yeah, it's such a great question, right? Like, oh man, so the insurance industry it's all about class codes, either NAICS, SIC, or ISO, and then every carrier has their own. And like, you talk about home-based businesses, but it's like startups. Like, how do you, we had a company that was like an Uber for massage, right? Anywhere you were, the masseuse would come. It's like,
sounds great. How do I sign up? But I feel bad that they need insurance. Yeah. Good luck.
So, as you start to see more innovative companies, this is really where I think just the strength of our carrier relations at this point, like having been good by them, it allows us the platform to have a conversation around like, hey, startups, like let's talk about a way to do these efficiently. I said small businesses were great from a loss ratio. Startups are even better. VC-backed startups are like, mwah, for insurance companies. Right?
I love it. Yeah. Just speaking
to do these, right? And again, it's all a conversation. It's a collaboration with them because look, they're the ones taking the underwriting risk. Like we're distribution, very clear about who we are in this equation, but we have to work together and actually make this seamless for the end customer so they choose us, and then also profitable for everybody who's in the chain. I would say, I would just share that I think one of the most gratifying parts of being a founder of this company for me is honestly all the folks who were part of the more traditional parts of this industry, whether they worked at a carrier, an underwriter, or a more traditional agency who've come over. This is on my mind because we've had our series of holiday parties recently, and so I've got a chance to speak to a lot of people in a non-work setting. And they talk about just how much more gratifying the job is here because technology has alleviated the horrible parts of the job, right? They would talk about how not mind-numbing it was to do all this administrative stuff, and how so much more of their time here is actually servicing customers or speaking to customers, and making real decisions on behalf of the customers, acting like a broker, as opposed to a typist. And that's been really gratifying to me. It's just like you can see an impact in the people who've chosen to work here and the quality of their life, and the fact that technology has brought something to them individually, not just sort of to the industry at large, sort of industry. And so that's the last thing I'd share with you.
Yeah, it inspired another question too, because you've talked a lot about sort of design thinking, but also relationship building in this industry. So for companies starting out, I mean, holiday parties are a great way to sort of get everybody to sort of take off the jacket for a minute, but curious to know your perspective. It sounds like that relationship building, you mentioned being on the phone every week if necessary to talk through the audits with their customers, going to their Christmas parties, staying engaged, giving them feedback. Sort of how has relationship building really mattered for you? And in what ways could you give advice to others who are maybe starting off on that journey and how to effectively do that?
Yeah. It's been huge. I mean, as a fellow MITer, I'm sure that at some point in your life, you're like, no, it's all in this book and I just got to read this and I'll figure it all out, right?
It's an equation that has a solution, and if only I can figure out the proper components, we're good. No, I've been there.
And I would just say, as I've gotten more experience, like it's so much more efficient. There's so much more you can learn. There's so much more richness in a conversation with someone than there is in anything you can pick up. Right. Now it takes both, I think, to be successful, but there's so much texture and richness in actually having a conversation and having the back and forth about what works and doesn't work and what would you improve and what would you change. that's what I would point to in terms of relationships. So I would say it was fundamental in terms of starting the company. Now, obviously, I have co-founders that came out of a relationship, right? We were friends and had a lot of mutual respect for each other. But then even just starting the company, we were able to tap into a network of people that we knew, or people who knew people around getting our feet wet in this industry. Internally at the company, I mean, if you spoke to anyone here, one of the things that they really like is how much cross-pollination there is. There are not silos. Like, you will have, a customer service rep who started 2 weeks ago stop by and talk to the head of product and say, I think we really need to change this, right? And it's completely welcomed. It's what we want. The whole company kind of runs in this way where we really like that people are talking to each other and that they know each other, because good ideas come from everywhere. And we want to keep those channels open. And then finally, outside of the company, right, we're distribution. We're not the ones who are manufacturing the product and putting it on a shelf, right? We live in an ecosystem. We have to play well and understand that ecosystem in order to do well, right? It's a chain, and it's only as strong as the weakest link. So if anything's broken between us and the customer, or us and the carrier, or if that carrier has a technology provider other than us and we're relying on them, it takes everything being at 100% in order to deliver a good customer experience. So I would say, just relationships and actually being on the same page and having the common goal of servicing the end customer well and making money while doing it is the foundation for actually doing anything together, right? Sort of having that team mentality.
The foundation for business, right? That the kind of coming together of somebody with a skill, that somebody who needs that skill, and finding the merge and the match. And I think you've done a fantastic job in building those relationships. I have one last question, and it might be too pie in the sky, but what does insurance look like 50 years from now? What if Coverwallet is infinitely successful? You start in small commercial and you take over the world. Sort of what can I expect when I'll date myself, but when I'm 80 or 90 years old, what is insurance?
Yeah.
Do you think about that? I do.
Yeah, I do think about it, and I feel sometimes I'm too entrenched in it.
Like, I can cut this part if it's too crazy, but I'm just curious, because I'm always fascinated by folks that think, again, not outside of the box, but a world without boxes. What is it? What does it become? Like, how can we get to sort of the optimal relationship, right? Like, how does that look? How does that feel? What can we make it together?
Yeah. So I know a couple of things. I know that these arbitrary policy terms won't exist anymore.
Okay.
There'll be a lot of flexibility around choosing your policy terms. It doesn't have to be 12 months or 1 day or 6 months. I know that right now, business insurance is crazy. There's like 40 different lines, right? You get one that will cover you in case somebody walks in and slips and falls. And you have another one that covers you in case ex-employee fires you for wrongful termination. So I absolutely see the multi-peril policy, one policy.
You don't have these sort of business owners policies that have general liability, workers' compensation, D&O, like all of these sort of patchwork.
Exactly. Some cases are duplicative about what they cover. So I see the multi-peril policy with modifications to it. Then I see, I guess those are the two big things that I can point to. I think those are coming.
Awesome. I think one of the visions that I have to add to that list might be that the sort of universe of data sharing becomes less opaque. Yeah. And so that we can make better decisions if we know more about the world around us rather than just our customers. And I think you kind of hit on that by sharing these aggregate level statistics. I think that's going to continue. Aggregate level statistics are super helpful, but even more micro level understanding of the environment around our customers is going to matter more to our decision making, to our ability to engage and distribute, right? Finding new customers in this soup of businesses. So I believe in what you're saying, and I would add that too. What do you think?
No, I believe it. That also made me think about there's probably going to be more of a tendency towards specialization. So, having by industry, actually having carriers who specialize more and more in a particular industry, as opposed to having these generalists who cover small business at large, including all these different folks. So more concentration and understanding in a homogenous risk pool, as opposed to try to spread it across several different homogenous risk pools. So I think we've seen that happen with other industries, sort of specialization, narrowing on a niche. And then there's always a cycle of someone gobbling them up, they're becoming aggregated, and specialization again. But I think
it wax and wanes. It's centralization, decentralization. Sounds like that's what you're doing at Coverwallet. So I'm excited for your future. I'm excited to track you as a person. It's been a fantastic experience to talk with you today and learn from you as a founder to founder. I think I definitely learned, and hopefully the insurance industry will continue to be better off for Coverwallet being in it. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. This has been Profiles in Risk with Carrie Ann Nadeau and Rashmi Melgiri. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good day.